we called the adoption agency. You got to let them know of any significant life changes. That's just the rules, part of the process. And we let them know that, wow, Erin is pregnant. And when we met that couple, she was pregnant. We didn't know it. And the woman almost hit the floor because she said, we just heard from the couple, and the couple was so touched and moved by your story, they decided to keep their child.
Wow.
So you talk about being there with our story
incredible.
at that time, to bring that story forward where they probably thought they were in a crisis.
Right.
And through maybe our perspective, they looked at this as an incredible gift and decided to move forward and have their family.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Moving the Mountain, a creative leadership podcast. A very special guest today, Marc Sherman. Marc, thanks for joining us. We've known each other for quite a while now. 2015, you were just saying?
Yeah.
And Marc runs a company called Organic Conception's Journey to Parenthood, which really helps couples who are struggling to conceive through their journey. And he kind of lived that journey with him and his wife, Erin. And so maybe we could start right from the beginning, and then kind of maybe how you and I met, where I kind of came into the picture. Why don't you take us away?
Well, I think I'm a special guest because it took you a year to get me in the seat. So
this guy is very hard to track down. Very hard.
It's just the pandemic. We can still blame everything on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you want me to start? What the company does, or how we met, or what we do?
Yeah. So why don't you take us in, like, how the company started, or maybe a little bit of your background, where you started? Because where I met you, you were CMO over at Schneider Electric, if I'm not mistaken. And what I really love about your story when I first met you was that you were leaving the corporate world and you were going to jump into entrepreneurship, and you're very passionate about this project, and you kind of left that behind. And over the course of, I don't know how many years it's been, you made these very radical leaps of faith, which I feel like few people do that. And it's inspiring to see. I don't think I could do some of the things that you've done.
It's inspiring as long as you're not living it.
Exactly. It's always great that it's someone else's story.
That's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah. Is it okay if I share kind of some of these moves that really stood out to me?
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. So I remember you had a beautiful home, custom designed by Meridian in Wakefield. I loved it. It was like my dream home there. And but I remember
mine too.
What's that?
It was mine too.
Yeah. And I remember I think you sold off maybe a boat or sports car, right, to invest into this business.
Yeah.
And then, that kind of became cashing in some 401k to further invest into the business. Then I think your wife had, even closed up shop with one of her businesses to kind of further pursue this.
Yeah.
And then when you had told me that, like, hey, we're selling our home and we're diving headfirst in this, I don't know if you got like an apartment, and eventually I know you did get funding for the company, but I was like, that's so wild. I can't believe all the things that he's like kind of going through in pursuit of this, this dream and this vision that you had. So yeah, if you want to take it away, like how you actually started the company.
Do you have any tissues? No, just kidding.
You do look a little teary eyed. He's like, I'm so sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have walked you down memory lane. But to me, from an outsider looking in, it's like, man, this guy really believes in like what he's doing. And, you had this dream to kind of pursue this thing. And it's been a while as an entrepreneur, and you're such a passionate person from the first day that I talked to you, and so much insight too with like working with people, and how you connect with them. So it's like from the first day I met you, I was like, man, this guy is 100% into this thing. And you have more energy than anyone I've ever met, anyone I've ever talked to. It's like an endless amount of energy. I don't know how you do it. But yeah, talk us through maybe your background and what caused you to, take that first leap, which was leaving, corporate America.
Yeah. It was like a midlife crisis. Some people buy a Corvette, and I decided to start a business.
How old were you when you did that?
I was about 18 years in corporate America, and I started at the ground level. I actually volunteered just to to prove myself within this company for free, just to kind of get in the door. It was APC at the time, and young startup company, or startup. They were decent size back in, let's see, 95 or so. And yeah, had an incredible career with them. Just moved up the ladder, and my
Yeah.
whole life was just that. It was just focused on work and growth, and just continued to get more and more responsibilities, and had an incredible experience at the company. Really, there's not a lot to say negatively, except for at some point in time, you do come to this point to say, not is this it, but the corporate ladder could be a very stressful place. You continue to do more. You continue to live a lifestyle based on earning more.
Mm.
And I think that I kind of hit this point that larger corporations things start to become internally challenging. Things become political. Companies are buying companies. And I just started to lose some enthusiasm for the work. And it was just hard for me to think that this was my next 20 years. And what's funny, I'll actually give you a pivotal moment. I was out in a leadership conference out in California. I was a senior VP, probably a younger one, across this group of leaders. And there was a lot of restructuring happening, which is just typical corporate America.
Mm.
And we had a private dinner just with the leadership team across North America. And they asked each person to get up and talk about a pivotal kind of life-changing story or event, something that happened in their lives, as a way to kind of create this bond across this group. And again, there was restructuring happening. So I was very much unsure of where my place would be within the company, but I happened to be at this event. And person after person got up there and talked about not seeing their kids, or lost parents that they never had the time for. And it was one story after another that was just regret, and people looking back, wishing that they
Mm.
had made different decisions. And the common theme across all these stories were life just gets out of balance. I'm sure in any business, even startups, it's not like it's much more balanced. But
Yeah.
for the corporate life, you're living on planes. And I think for a lot of people, they can't get that time back. And I had this moment of being a little bit younger, saying, is this me up there in 20 years, having regret that I don't know my kids,
Mm.
or haven't had the time to just connect with loved ones and be part of their lives and be present? And it was just like, that was kind of the aha moment for me, that through all the restructuring, if I had the chance to exit in some responsible way, then I really made up my mind that night that it was not going to be a story like that, 20 years later, having great amounts of regret for the life I didn't live. So it
Mm.
was that moment actually that was kind of the pin that started the cascade of.
Did you already have the idea for a business or what you were going to do next? Did you just go in, say, "Hey, I'm out, 2-week notice"? I'm sure it's more like
Yeah.
a few month notice in a
Yeah.
corporate job like that. But
In terms of what I was going to do next,
yeah.
everyone has something, I think, that touches them in their lives. There's something that calls you in some way. And a lot of people, it's something I'll get to at some point in time. And we think there'll be that perfect opportunity where everything aligns and this is it. Right. And so for Aaron and I, we dealt with infertility for close to a decade. It literally consumed our lives. It changes really who you are as a person. It changes your dynamic as a couple. It changes your motivation, enthusiasm for life. And then we became the story that you know about, which everyone knows, the story of a couple that struggles for years. Then they decide to move towards adoption or some other path, and they have this surprise, miraculous kind of miracle baby, this unexpected surprise conception. And we had actually two separate instances over the course of the decade where this thing consumed us, where we had two kind of unexpected conceptions. And so for many, many years, we were actually frustrated that we became that annoying story, because when you're struggling, everyone comes out of the woodwork to tell you, hey, why don't you just adopt? And it really discounts what you're feeling, what you're going through. It makes you feel like you actually have to pursue some other path as a way to trick your body. The stories at face value are completely useless. But here it happened to us. So for years I said, gosh, I can't believe these stories have not been researched, to truly understand, are they one-off instances that can't be explained, or perhaps there's insights or patterns or commonalities that through research could emerge to help people understand that we're not only just physical beings, but there's an emotional and psychological component that we experience. And just like we prepare our bodies for conception, how do we prepare our minds? So I think for years had this idea that someday I would love to research, all variations of these stories and see if there's findings there that can be brought forward to help people that get completely lost and consumed And most people, you give up living because you're living to try. And it's an incredible amount of loss, worry, anxiety. And so the answer is, for years, it was that little seed that we all have that says someday.
Mhm.
And for me, the reality of where I was from a corporate perspective, combined with this passion I had for wanting to pursue something, the timing just felt like, if there's ever going to be a time where I don't look back and regret that I talked about doing something my whole life and didn't, this was that opportunity.
Yeah. Did you still you guys were trying while you were still in corporate America, right?
Yeah, our three children all conceived naturally. Actually, we conceived all three during my corporate duration. Yeah.
And do you feel like the stresses of work and, a high level job like that contributed to what you guys were going through?
I think stress in general is for sure a factor. I think that for any couple, and certainly women today, they're worried about their age. They're trying to manage careers. We're all
Mm,
trying to get to a financial level of stability, and so we're trying later in life. Most people know of someone who has suffered. I think we have that worry really deep behind in our minds, that what if something is not right, and then yes, you start to move into this exciting process, and within several months of it not happening as planned, I would say that worry is really morphing into great levels of anxiety for sure.
mm,
And I think that this is why, a lot of people will move towards fertility treatment, is because we're just panicked that we missed our window, we waited too long, and so for sure stress is a factor. I think the challenge is that, dealing with the stress related to infertility is easier said than done. I mean, people are tired of being told to just relax and go get a massage. I think that the way
right.
we're approaching it with what we do is to really help them really proactively prepare our minds, leverage the latest in cognitive behavioral therapy to start to put ourselves in a position where we're having a healthy quality of life, and we understand what the triggers are that we face, but understand there's some choice in terms of how we interpret what we're going through, the meaning we give it, and the life and actions we create around the struggle, because for a lot of people it just consumes them. Therefore, it only takes that stress and makes it worse.
Right. And I remember you told me you guys kind of had a breaking point where you I think that's when you bought the boat, right? You had named it something.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the name of
Yeah.
the
Oh,
boat?
it's great. Well, I think it's a great story. So we struggled for about 5 years for our son Maxwell,
Mm,
and after I'm talking. The word struggle is an understatement. There's not really a good adjective to talk about what 5 years is like. Where every month you go from like hopeful that maybe this is the month to that
right.
crashing despair when it doesn't happen again, and that's that repetitive cycle. It's just there's just no words to describe really what it's like to live through that.
Right.
But yeah, we came to this point, you're talking 5 years later, where we came very close to fertility treatments, and we just decided that wasn't our path for multiple reasons. And
Yeah. And I imagine it
yeah,
must put so much strain on the marriage too. You're supposed to be like enjoying each other and that kind of thing. And it's just
yeah,
like comes all about, this wall that you can't like break through.
you're right. There's a complete change in the relationship dynamic for sure.
Mm,
This exciting process that the ability, like moving forward and building your family, it really quickly became plagued with all the what if scenarios. And then you start to socially isolate, and you're feeling angry and jealous of others. And the entire process becomes very planned. It feels very timed. It starts to become like everything else in our life, very predictable, a job that needs to get done, and with a lot of worry and anxiety for
mm,
sure. Yeah. So for our son Maxwell, we hit this breaking point where we were done. Treatment wasn't our path at the time. Erin would sit here and tell you that she felt, when she walked away from that fertility clinic, when we decided not to pursue that at that time, that she felt like she was giving up on her dreams to be a mom, and
yeah.
it was a really hard place. It's a stage in our program called rawness, and it's what it is. But over time, we started to really come back to each other, our lives, and we bought this 35-foot boat that I had no right financially purchasing. And if you're ever out in the water, run, because I had no right driving this thing. And we really got back to life. We made up for a lot of lost time, and we
Mm,
bought the boat. We bought a matching, like a bright yellow Jeep, and the name of the boat was the same name as the boat, and it was a Jimmy Buffett song called Jollymon. And what do you think happened less than 3 months later?
mm,
We were literally in the emergency room at South County Hospital, and my wife was unsure what was wrong with her. We're not ones to rush to the hospital by any means, but
right.
we did, and I think it was at 1 o'clock in the morning. We ended up hearing the heartbeat of our son Maxwell,
Wow.
and to our surprise, complete surprise, after 5 years, we had found out that we had successfully conceived our son. So there goes the boat, there goes the Jeep, there goes all the things that we end up having a selling off sale. But anyway, it got us to an incredible place. But yeah, we had that first unexpected conception.
Well, yeah. Yeah, this might be a little off topic. Maybe I'll save this for after the podcast. Maybe it's a more personal question.
You could throw it out there. That's
Yeah.
good old editing.
It just kind of popped in my head,
Yeah.
like for someone that's like really going, and if this is too much, we can cut this out, no problem. But for someone that's like really struggling with like infertility, right? At the same time, you have people terminating their pregnancies. Like, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I think it's a hard reality that I think anyone struggling is facing
Yeah,
at any moment, and especially as people are desperate to have their own children,
Right.
or even adoption, which is not the easiest process, and there's a lot of challenges, and so you can't help but be like, wow, there's so many people that would love to give a wonderful, loving home to these
Right.
children, for sure.
Yeah, I know it's a touchy political subject, but figured I'd mention that. So you had your first son, Maxwell, and I'm sure that was just like a miracle and a
Yeah.
huge celebratory moment. Kind of what happened next in this story there.
So we enjoyed our son. Yeah, I'll never forget when my mom, because we were at dinner with my parents when Aaron wasn't feeling well, that led us to go to the hospital, which we almost debated not doing it, but we did, and they wanted to do a routine X-ray on her stomach and did the pregnancy test and found that out. But I'll never forget the next day, we went to my mom's because it got late, and she said, "What happened?" And we said, "Well, they said Aaron needs to take this." And we handed my mom a brown paper bag, and in it had little booties
Wow.
and some baby stuff. And I'll never forget the literally screams that came, because your whole family endures the pain as well, even though you're
Okay.
living it as a couple. There's a cloud my brother could easily conceive, and we were showing up at holidays, and we desperately wanted that. So it was an incredible moment, I guess, to bring that gift to our family. But yeah, we enjoyed our son. We then started to try to conceive again, and I think we would have learned something, Sean, but we ran into a struggle once again. I think
Yeah.
that for a lot of people, when they think about their second child, they're thinking about, oh, I want my kids a certain age apart, and they're going to be best friends, go to the same schools. And you have all these things you fabricate in your mind in terms of the way it's supposed to go.
Mm.
I'm not saying that was what was the problem necessarily, but we struggled for 3.5 years. We decided to move to the adoption process because we had talked a lot about it during the 5 years that we struggled. So we said, let's go ahead and do it. And we moved through the process. We were chosen by a young couple in Boston to talk to them about their unborn child. Like I said, young couple. We had a heck of a conversation with them. I remember feeling incredibly intimidated that we're not better than anyone. This is this unborn child's mom and dad. And I ended up writing a letter to them in terms of what it was like to experience the struggle for 5 years, and how
Wow.
it changed our perspective on life and life's order. And sometimes when you're not in control the way you'd like to be, we find ourselves to be more open and trusting to where that process will take us, even though we don't know. So we had an incredible connection with this couple. It was powerful, honestly. It was really a touching moment. And we leave this meeting, and we're now anxiously waiting the news if this couple was going to choose us as their adopted family, essentially.
Yeah.
And
And how does that work? Do they interview multiple couples? And how do-
yeah, I think you have to put these books forward that describe your life and pictures and all the stuff that you do to kind of present. Well, the adoption agency lets them choose, and that's a good question. I'm not sure how many
Mm.
they ultimately choose through the
Yeah.
process, or at least select to interview. I mean, you
I
hate
didn't
to
know that
say
was
it that,
happening.
but
It's a very
yeah, oh
interesting.
yeah, you put there's home studies, and people come to your home to make sure your home is
Right.
sufficient. Incredible checks and balances, and this is why the process of adoption is not an overnight process,
Right.
and costly too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're anxiously waiting their news. Like, we'll never forget, just like this waiting period. And in that I forget if it was a couple week wait, but my wife found out that she was pregnant. She literally walked in with the 2 lines on that pregnancy test, which I never thought we'd actually see.
Mhm.
And she was pregnant. And the most incredible part of the story, and I'll never forget the moment, is we called the adoption agency. You got to let them know of any significant life changes. That's
Mm.
just the rule, as part of the process. And we let them know that, wow, Erin is pregnant. And when we met that couple, she was pregnant. We didn't know it. And the woman
Wow.
almost hit the floor, because she said, we just heard from the couple, and the couple was so touched and moved by your story they decided to keep their child. So you
Wow.
talk about being there with our
That's incredible.
story at
Yeah.
that time to bring that story forward where they probably thought they were in a crisis.
Right.
And through maybe our perspective, they looked at this as an incredible gift and
Right.
decided to
Wow.
move forward and have their family.
That's amazing. Have you ever heard from them again or touch
No,
base with them? No.
no, would love to.
Oh, that's crazy.
So that was that second trigger. And this is where you're like, okay, there's more to these stories than what meets the eye.
Right.
And for all the people that are struggling and trying everything and losing perspective on life and pursuing aggressive treatment that might not be the right thing for them or their bodies, is there potentially another dimension that you can bring into this conversation? And I met this woman, Dr. Kate Webster. She was a research psychologist, and she was bold enough to go off on our own to conduct research that was never done before. And we uncovered these 9 psychological stages and built the first cognitive-based online program and platform to help support the emotional and psychological needs of women and couples.
And what was the thought? I mean, obviously, your curiosity maybe was like kind of spurring you to kind of, hey, like, what is this? What's going on here? And then how did you find? Was it just serendipitous where you met Dr. Kate? How did that really come about?
Yeah, I think great first question, because I think like what called me to this, I think I was definitely always curious. I actually was frustrated that the stories at face value were so hurtful when you were struggling,
Hmm.
and that even on Good Morning America, periodically these stories get published and broadcast, these miracles, and just always felt like there's got to be more to it, but you never get deeper. You never go further into them to understand if there's anything. Like, life is a shared society. We learn as a through shared learnings, right? So you have
Right.
these stories that never move from just face value. So I think there was curiosity, and I think at the end of the day, and probably the reason I did well in corporate, I just loved motivating people and getting the most out of people and seeing the best in people and knowing that this is the hardest time of probably a younger couple's life. They compare infertility as like a cancer diagnosis. So this is significantly a form of trauma.
Yeah.
And to help people endure this in a healthy way and still live your life that you can live and try at the same time, it was just, I don't know. I just felt like maybe this is something that I'm called to do and give back. And it's a form of leadership in some ways. And the only reason I think I did well at corporate was I was able to get a lot out of people. And we, it was always fair to people and motivated people. And I think that I just ultimately felt like this could be an interesting business.
Yeah. So is that just like your sense of empathy towards, like, you knew how much you struggled and you're like, hey, a lot of couples are going through this. This is like worth exploring.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at the data and just millions and millions of couples that are struggling. And all our research, it's not just because you struggled for 5 years. It could be someone that's 3 or 4 months in that's just starting to get a little
Right.
worried and
Real
panic. And have a
panicked.
friend
Yeah.
that suffered, or someone that before they even started trying always wondered, like, oh gosh, did I miss my window? Or for some women that are on birth control, wondering if they're damaging their bodies. It doesn't take much before you're at this jumping
It's
point
very
where
true. I think we
something's wrong.
haphazardly kind of just take these, drugs or whatever, and not really thinking about if there's consequences to them, and just assuming that they're safe and whatnot. I don't know if there's, any evidence that they're not, but there's been a few women in my church that have struggled with infertility, and they get very much like they so badly want to be mothers, and they'll go up to the altar to ask for prayer and things like that, and they're really, but they're so focused,
Yeah.
they're so consumed on uh the thing that they want, their desire, um and they start losing hope, you know um I was trying to encourage one of the couples, this was probably a few months ago, is like trying to just shift your perspective a little bit, because I think singleness too, and people's desire to get married, it's this kind of a similar stage, or
Sure.
like, hey, it's not happening, kind of losing hope here.
Yeah.
And it can be a gift if you look at it, where it's like, if you're it could be a season worth enjoying, where it's like, hey, you don't have kids yet, that you could, yeah, consuming all your time and attention and focus, where, hey, maybe you're called to be working on a business, or pursuing, career goals or something, when there's a lot of things when you become a parent, you probably don't have the time for, don't have the focus or the energy. So I was trying to help her just like kind of shift her
Yeah.
perspective a little bit. And yeah, she actually just got pregnant. She just announced that she
Wow.
was pregnant. So that was really awesome. I'm not
Nice.
sure if it's had anything to do with
No,
what I said,
sometimes
but
a
you know,
a perspective shift is everything. I think a lot of
yeah,
what we're trying to do through the research and hundreds of these stories is that there's a shift in the way in which we interpret the journey and the way we feel and the way we act, and our ability to change some of that can enable our bodies to feel safe and perform at their best. Now, listen, I
mm,
will say some people need treatment. It's never, I try to be very careful that it's either or. Some people have had cancer, some people do have diagnosis or prognosis issues that might need support. But at the end of the day, still, if your mind is not right and you're living with that isolation, you just
right,
feel all consumed.
right,
We just really don't give our bodies the best chance for a successful outcome, while at the same time you can't get the time back. So your point about this is a chapter, and in every chapter of a book, it's made up of lots of chapters, some good, some bad, but it's our story and the way
right,
your family comes to be. I think for a lot of people, they're comparing themselves to others that are moving on, and you only feel like you're getting further
right,
from that, and that just that adds to it. And I think we can shift to say your story's yours, and it makes you unique, and it'll make your perspective on your family unique, and it's a gift for a lot. All the people that struggled on average for 3.5 years in our research, then had this unexpected conception, and they experienced these 9 transformations that we cover.
mm,
They look back at the struggle as a gift, as the preparation,
mm.
as like I wouldn't change a thing, even though while they're in it,
I'm sure
they
it does
absolutely would have.
deepen your appreciation for motherhood or fatherhood, you know? It's like, hey, I almost didn't have this.
I think for sure. My wife and I mean, honestly, we could not wait to have a screaming baby at 3 a.m. with a full diaper.
Right.
And honestly, to this day, we just do not look at. There was just never that moment. We struggled too long, and it's just sometimes our struggle gives us the greatest perspective in life. Doesn't mean everyone has to
Right.
struggle to love their children. That's not what we're saying. But I think certainly there's a different experience that leads to a different perspective.
Yeah. So yeah, talk to me about maybe that transition too. About so you're meeting with Dr. Kate
Yeah.
and you're kind of doing all this research, and I'm sure you're finding a lot of like overlapping, with data points. Um, Kind of what was like the next kind of step there?
Yeah, well, you asked about Dr. Kate. I ended up meeting her in my corporate life.
Mm,
She was someone that was doing some consulting, and I just felt this connection. I ended up hiring her as part of my team.
mm,
And then through our relationship, I just shared with her what I had been through, and then said, "Would you ever be, if I left, would you ever come along and help me to conduct the research?" I'm not a researcher, I'm not a psychologist,
yeah.
but so that's how Kate and I met and decided to take that leap. I will echo what you said. I think from a lot of on paper, I was successful
Hmm.
at titles and whether you look at comp and stuff, whatever it is. But you know what? It's not. I really have a whole different definition of success. I think you can easily get lost on what it means, and I took that leap, probably not knowing a lot of what I know now in terms of what it takes to do something that matters and something that gives back. And I think we as a society look at success in a straightforward manner relative to a lot of you know um, things that are maybe not as important as they should be in terms of success. And when you step away to go walk away from everything you've built, everything that you've earned, everything that you create a life and identity around your work and your profession
Right.
and how you do. And you talk about a reverse engineering, literally, everything that we knew and things that we built, to really hang in there long enough to see this company through. It did require an incredible amount of sacrifice, but you really realize, what do you really need to live? And you can do well, but if you're not really making a difference, you just, your values start to change. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think, I didn't know all of that when I jumped into it, but the reality of doing research that takes a long time, building a digital platform that helps support people, and to then take something to market, that there's not a Me Too product, but it's something very unique and requires a lot of education. The journey's long and hard, and you're either committed or you're not. And I will tell you, many, many times it'd been much easier just to stop and go get a job. and kind of go maintain the life that you had. But I don't know, for some reason, maybe because the need is so great and the
Yeah.
people we were engaging were changing their lives in such a positive way. How do you walk away?
Right.
I don't have the money I had before. I don't have the house that I had before. It's the material things that I never felt like I was completely attached to. Now, listen, some things are nice to
Right.
have in life, and I don't think what we've gone through the last few years has been long and hard. But when you're doing something that's this significant, it
Right.
never really felt like a lot of sacrifice. I have to tell you that.
Yeah. And do you feel like more fulfilled? Because I know sometimes too, as um, maybe as entrepreneurs or as men, like uh, I get a lot of joy out of the work itself, and just the completing of the task, and maybe like money or material things are like a product of that, but they're kind of less important to me. I kind of
Yeah.
like the doing of the thing,
Hmm.
like making a good piece of art, feeling proud of it, or completing something like that. And um, is it the same for you, um, or kind of like what's going on there? Is
I think it is. I also, it for sure is. I mean, we took something from nothing. We uncovered these stories. We're not one offs. There's a pattern here. There's a sequence. We can bring this pattern to others and truly change their lives in the hardest situations that they're in today. So there's no question of passion. I also always did want to start my own company. I always wanted to do something that mattered. I always felt like I wanted to leave something behind that,
yeah,
just made a difference. And then the third piece I think is I'm probably just, I don't say stubborn. I see it clearly in terms of the impact this could have on the market. And just because it didn't happen in year one, year two, year three, year four, I didn't let that highly discouraging,
mhm,
but it didn't stop me from saying everything I see from the market, from the need, from the performance of what we're doing, it's there. It's just I have no control over exactly when this might bring us financially stability.
yeah.
So it's just not stopping
And
until
I've
we
always
achieve the
felt that
goal.
about your company. Like with talking to you, like it seems like it's such a great product. It could really help the market. It's like getting it out there and polishing it up and all that. It's just it's always a little bewildering, why it's just like, man, why hasn't this like really hit yet,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
stories are like remarkable. Um and even if it needed like, more funding and you needed, XYZ to really kind of take it to the next level, it's like, your ability to kind of talk about the vision and get people on board with it is like, I've never really quite seen like that gift before, to get people to really just buy in. Um, so it's always like a little bit bewildering to me that like, someone hasn't come along and be like, hey, we need to do a strategist XYZ and kind of really take this to, the next level.
yeah,
So I know we're kind of like jumping ahead in the story, but
yeah.
like, yeah, kind of where are things at
Well,
right
it
now?
is that it's been the most discouraging part. You think it'd be a no-brainer if someone could
Yeah.
just invest in something that enables them to potentially achieve the outcome that they so desperately want without all the, the pain and the sacrifice and actually live a healthy
Right.
life.
Which maybe you need a little bit of,
I think the reality is, you don't know until you get something out in the market. And I think that there's a lot of factors in any business that attribute why it does well or not. And I think for us, it was the sale is much harder than we thought. I think couples are overwhelmed by
mm,
everything they're told to do and look at and diets. I mean, you're getting, Google telling you a million things to do, your best friends, your family, your Aunt Susie's telling you what you should do. I mean, you are being consumed very quickly. And then there's doctors. And at some point in time, we're finding that for a lot of people, they'd rather work on things that are tangible. Like I'll change my diet, I'll remove toxins, I'll get treatment, I'll go to acupuncture.
mm,
Asking someone to emotionally explore
right.
and open themselves up much harder than we thought. For sure. If
Right.
you
It's like that quick
underestimate that.
fix.
It's not a quick fix, and we're not guaranteeing babies. I think
Right.
for a lot of things that are out there, they're saying do this, you'll achieve your 30% success rate. We don't feel ethically we don't know what someone's journey will be like. We
Do you
don't
think
know what the outcome will be.
do you think that's data that could be found with like enough having enough people go through the program, be like, hey, out of the 100, 200 people that's gone through it, we've seen this
Yeah.
percentage rate?
Here's my struggle. Be transparent with you. The struggle is I've had so many people join
Mhm.
And I've had a woman in Australia, her name is Jen, we're actually close now, and she said, the only reason I did your program, it was the only organization that wasn't promising a baby.
Hmm.
And her take was, do you know how many things I tried and failed? I didn't want to add something else to that list.
Hmm.
So if you say the goal is this will help improve your odds, then anyone that goes into it doesn't succeed
Right.
feels like a failure. And that's
Yeah.
the nature. So you know what the reality is, and again, maybe this is just what I tell myself. It's a new category, whether I see it in my lifetime or someone else's, there's another component to this journey. And we're not going to stop until we make a dent in the market in some capacity. It might not be as big as I expected it to be. It might be slower than I think, which it is. But I think over time we are seeing progress. We're getting a lot of doctors that are in the space that are now including our program as part of their preconception care, where the clinics and the fertility providers are actually including a mental health platform is part of the way in which they care for people. So we had to pivot to say, maybe selling to the consumer directly, they're overwhelmed. Let's go to where they're being cared for. And we have
Mm.
clinics that pay us a monthly fee, and every one of their patients gets lifetime access to our platform, to our live coaching calls, to our private community. And then we have a whole set of modules that help support the staff of these clinics better understand the emotional side of what their patients are dealing with, so they can make that connection and have that empathy while at the same time avoiding fatigue and burnout. So anytime you run into an obstacle, I mean, it's a choice. A
Right.
startup business is a relationship like any. There's the honeymoon phase where it was super fun at the beginning, and
Right.
then
Right.
you go through some dark times, and you either stay committed or you get divorced and walk away. And I think that it matters what we're doing. The market's there, the need is there. You just got to keep fighting to figure out what's the best
Yeah.
way to take the product to market.
And that's so true. Like there is that honeymoon phase of the startup, and it's like all fun and coming up with the packaging and like getting the data going, and just like it's all new, and people are there's like an excitement around it.
Yeah.
And we've
Like any
definitely,
relationship, think about it. And then what
yeah,
happens
so
4
true.
years later?
Right.
Things aren't as fun.
Right.
Yeah, in many ways, you're dealing with so many obstacles and setbacks and things that are frustrating and not the way you expected life to go. And
Mm.
it's a two-way relationship, a startup and its founders. I mean,
Right.
and believe me, for many times you would think just the divorce is what makes sense, but it's not the answer. I mean, in many relationships, it's through those low points that drive the growth, that drive the innovation. When you're bootstrapping it and your house is on
Yeah.
the line and you're all the life that you once know it. I mean, you do innovate in your thinking. And again, and I'm no success story. I feel very successful in terms of the difference that we're making, and we're getting more and more providers to come on board. And it's incredibly gratifying when people, I had a demo today and the doctor just said, I've not seen anything like this. This is
Mm.
digitally preparing people mentally. We have so many protocols on how we physically care for people.
Right.
It comes to mental health, unless they're crying or they had a setback, we hand them a business card of a therapist. But the larger majority of people aren't seeking out help. And this platform enables us to do it. So I think that our goal day one is to touch millions of lives.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm just not doing it directly to you, but it's your provider that's offering, or maybe
Right.
someday it's your employer that's offering our platform as a
Oh, that's
as
really
a
good too.
benefit. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of validation. Took me many years, but over this last year has been the most rewarding in terms of people validating what we're
Yeah.
doing.
And that's the thing. It's always been there. Like every time I've talked to you, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. And I love the idea that you're not kind of like, hitting on like the success rate. Cause you're right. It's just like, that's almost like they'd be, not advantageous to you're trying to get them to like relax and like, still enjoy life. And it's just like, they're going to be focused on like just another result.
It's another result. And that's the whole problem. That everything you're doing is so result driven. Your whole month is about, oh my gosh, this is all the things that we did to achieve this success. And then it didn't happen. And you look back at the things you did and
Mm.
there's wasted money. And you forget too how much money it costs. I mean, from supplements to things you do with your diet to there's an incredible amount of cost. So when you throw one other thing, which is this
Right.
mindset, self-growth thing, it's just but these are the things you learn. This is
Sometimes
part of
it's
the
that perceived value too, and it happens in every market, right? Where it's just like maybe you're paying what I'm not sure how much the IV is
IVF.
for IVF. Yeah, I'm sure that's in the tens of thousands,
Yeah, the average is like 15,000.
15,000. Yeah,
For a cycle.
it's almost like, well, that's 15,000, and this program's not sure what you're charging nowadays, but
Couple $100.
a couple $100. It's like, oh, this one must guarantee results. It must be a little bit I might have better luck here,
Yeah. I think we are a society that we want answers, we want fixes. I think in a lot of cases, people label themselves, where you like, I know it, I'm older, so that's probably the problem. So we're quick to leap to a lot of limiting beliefs about ourselves and our bodies
Yep.
and categorize ourselves in a way. Therefore, we're not saying it has anything to do with our mind. I'm as stressed as the last person. There's something physically wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm damaged. I need help. And the move towards medical intervention is the leading path that people, would pursue. So
Yeah.
again, the things you don't know, you think you can throw something out there and, go buy my house back, but it's a very complicated psychological experience that someone's going through, that has not helped us in the short term in terms of,
Yeah.
to getting the company out there.
And so I know you tried a lot of different avenues with it. And you had just mentioned the latest one is kind of going right through the doctors, which I think is brilliant because it's like they're an authority, they're like they established trust is already there. So it's like they're the ones, pitching this. And then you mentioned maybe running through companies as well. Is that something that like you've maybe tried to implement into like companies that offer like HR kind of softwares and things like that?
Yeah, I think two things. So yeah, you either give up or you realize, wait a minute, the doctors can appreciate that this
Yeah, that
emotional piece is
validation from the
real.
doctors is huge.
And treatment itself only makes your emotions worse. You're about to put a lot of money on the line.
Which is stressful.
It does stressful. There's physical shots and drugs and massive changes physically. And then the success rate as it gets better with things like IVF, it's still, you know, 3 to 4 out of 10 succeed. So you have significant amount of disappointment and failure that first cycle. So you
Mm.
start to realize where's the money in the market? Where's someone that can really see the need? And we then kind of packaged up the consumer patient part of our platform, combined with all the stuff we could do to their staff, packaged together in a monthly subscription. All of a sudden, literally a year ago, just about today, we had our first clinic. Like, yes, this is filling an incredible hole. And in the platform, we can link people to all the clinic's other wellness offerings, acupuncturists, nutritionists, and even therapists. We're not replacing therapy.
Mhm.
We're trying to reach all the people that aren't seeking out therapy. Then within the platform, the click of the button, they connect to the therapist that the clinic recommends. So at the end of the day, your first sale is the hardest because there's no one else doing it. And they're like, who else is doing this? Then you get one. It led to 2, led to 3, led to 4. We've had a couple big clinics in the West Coast put press releases out recently. You've just dealt with a pandemic. Infertility is one of the most stressful times. And are we really going to accept that the only answer to mental health is after someone's experienced a setback or they start crying in the office and then we send them to a therapist, or we provide a proactive approach, and that's what we're doing. So I think the first base in any business, I should have done this years before, but we're here, is to go get a certain percentage of the overall clinics that are in the market. And I am focusing for the first time ever. I think one thing I struggled with as a startup is there were so many different places that I got excited about that we could take the product. And I've learned so much about picking a vertical. In everything that you do, you focus on that vertical. You then learn what works, what doesn't, messaging, price points, how to talk their language. And not to say you can't bring on another vertical like employers, but right now to bring the company to some financial stability.
Mhm.
Of the 600 or so, clinics that are out there, our goal is to get to, 20% of them paying us a monthly fee. And then through that success, we can then invest in other channels, which I think the employer becomes, wellness programs at your employer matter. For employers to pay for fertility treatment is quite costly.
Mhm.
So many can't do it. I think those that can't, we become an incredible, you can't ignore it if one of your employees is
Right.
struggling.
Right.
And those that can offer it, why not have something to help them have a better success rate or put them in a better position for success by implementing our program as maybe even a prerequisite for fertility treatment. So I think the employer vertical is next for us. We're just trying to stay very focused on succeeding within the clinics.
Yeah, and you're bootstrapping all that. Like you're the one contacting all those clinics, right?
We're looking at it.
While
Sales team of
managing
one.
the marketing team, raising funding.
Yeah, it's a small team. I've gone through a lot of iterations of some people that have come in and helped and lost some people. And there's I heard from a podcast that said something like a startup is going from one setback to another with enthusiasm.
Hmm.
And honestly, how many times I felt truly honestly, no, like kicked in the stomach.
Yeah.
And I literally have to remind myself that, okay, this is not going to take us down, and keep moving to the next.
That's the thing.
Keep
Like
moving forward.
perseverance in this game is like everything. And I remember my first kick to the stomach, as you said, like, we had a major player kind of leave in peak season. And I was just like, how am I going to do this?
Right.
That was brutal.
Tests your
That was
character.
brutal.
I mean,
And I wanted to quit, but then I couldn't quit because we had all these commitments,
Yeah.
So I was like, how am I? It just like forces you to like make this happen.
That's right. Sometimes that's great. You're committed. What do
Yeah.
you do?
And then the pandemic, obviously,
Right.
another
So think
huge
about it.
setback
Yeah.
to get through. It's like,
Yeah, you've lived it.
Yeah.
I think anyone that's been here, you live it, you know?
And it can get discouraging because it does feel like, big setback, everything you're working towards and kind of pushing towards and working on. It's like, man, it's just like, again, stripped away.
Stripped away. Yeah.
But,
persistence.
Yeah.
Or you got to be crazy. Half the time, I don't know. It's probably a little bit of both.
Some kind of sickness.
It's a sickness. There's no going back, though. The idea of not doing your own thing once you've had a chance to do it is be hard to go work for someone else.
Yeah, and I just love your wife, Erin, because she has like been so supportive from an outsider looking in.
Yeah.
I haven't seen behind the curtains, but outsider looking in, just like being like, yeah, go for it, and being on board for everything. I feel like that must be huge with like
it's
having
honestly,
a supportive
it's crazy
partner.
I mean, honestly, not to get to something that's material, because that really doesn't matter. We both never came from much, but that home you did walk in, again, it wasn't crazy size, but it was designed by Erin. It was something that every
Beautiful.
angle, every wall, anything that was there was like her passion for design, and to pack up your 3 kids and get in the car and drive to Vermont and go live in some house. And the worst day of my life was Emmy, who and I'm trying to think how old she was at this time, maybe 4 o'clock. We're all sleeping in one room because the house was getting painted in Vermont. And she was literally screaming, I want to go home, get those people out of our house. Why are they there? And I'll just, those are the things that are just, you start to look at saying, wow, am I being selfish for not just going to get back to a job and keeping the family stable? I mean, stability is important for kids. So it was for Erin to allow us to continue to throw at this what we have, and potentially we've essentially put everything into it.
I mean, what are those conversations like?
That's a great question. I think I have my own trauma that I don't really, looking back. I think that we realized that we're the means, the life that we were living before was a corporate America life. And I think we always knew this would do well and we would do okay. But when you start earning more money, there's a price tag that comes with it. So I think either way, from a numbers perspective, that's just not the life I wanted to live, whether doing this job or any other job. I didn't have balance. I didn't see the kids a ton. I'm on a plane because I work your butt off. You feel like you're entitled to what the car you want and dinners and landscape. I'm not home anytime. So our cost of living is going up as I'm making more. And I don't think you never save what you think your whole life gradually moves along with your earnings.
Right.
And when you're not home, you're now paying people to do all the stuff that you once did, and you feel entitled and you go on the vacation. So at the end of the day, I think it was just more of a financial look that this is a life that I'm not willing to sign back up for, whether it be the startup or some other job. Yeah. It's just too high for a long-term
would you say like you're happier now? And let's say like Organic Conceptions did, take off and you're earning the same kind of salary. Do you feel like you'd kind of maintain a similar lifestyle as you do now? Or would you kind of get back into the,
Erin and I just said it the other day that I think that part of this was maybe some lessons that we had to experience and go through. And again, I can't say enough. We weren't doing wasn't a we weren't doing anything crazy, but we always gave so much to the community. But I think there is a component that I think about to say all the things that I thought we needed, we don't need, and they're so easy to waste. It's just so easy to have excess, and it doesn't bring you greater happiness. Absolutely not. So I do feel like I'd be more responsible. If the universe wants to allow me to do a little bit better, I'd be very open to that. But I don't think our lives would change. I think you realize what is important, Sean, what
Yeah.
is really important. And for my kids, especially my son who's a little older, to see, we had things available to us, and he's really seen through probably some important years of his own growth that
Right.
we struggled, and this was a hard situation to maneuver through and to do something that matters. But so I almost feel like for him, it was a nice lesson, even though that's not why we went through this process. But the answer is that we would absolutely not change our lifestyle. We have everything that we need.
Right. Yeah, and it's, they also get to see you're not really sure like your character until it's like really tested, and they've gotten to see that, hey, like my dad's not afraid to take a risk and he can persevere and, you know, uh, so it's like there is that,
Yeah. I
where
hope
you,
some of that gets through. I think
right?
yeah,
It's
I think
like
they'd like to see daddy like, hey, I
see
can
like
go
what a
find a
person's
job,
made of,
dad. Yeah, dad, hey, come on. Can you find something on the side? This is a little extreme, isn't it? But yeah, no question. It's good. And
Yeah.
Erin is not only, has supported this whole thing, but such an active part of the business. The what she does for our members is incredible. Her insight and knowledge of when you live something
Right.
for a decade and come out the other side, and
Yeah.
her knowledge as a coach and all the mindset work.
And
I mean, the company wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't have kept going really if we didn't have Erin and I just believing that we
yeah,
got this.
I remember you saying that too. It's better to have a woman's perspective,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
with
yeah.
it. It makes sense. It makes sense. Like, who's
Yeah.
this guy?
Who's this guy talking about my fertility? And for the
Yeah.
first X years, it was me. It was,
Right.
Dr. Kate,
Yeah.
built the program. But in terms of the face to the company, it
Right.
was me. And over the last couple of years, Erin's been really taking the front seat. So,
Yeah. Well, they say that too. Kind of getting back to what we're saying. That's like 70K is like the number that people need to make. Anything that you make over 70, it really doesn't contribute more to like your overall happiness. Like it's like, yeah, 70K, you kind of have everything that you need and
sure.
you can live comfortably and
Yeah.
have money left over.
Yeah.
Um, I was just
It's
reading that.
true. It's a life, for a lot of people, everyone generally, there's some moment where you have to make some shifts. Whether I stayed another 10 years in corporate America and then they tell you to get lost and you realize, oh my gosh, the life I've created, how do I go find another job that gets me back here? I think I feel like I ripped the Band-Aid off earlier and making lots of adjustments to life and what I really need
Yeah.
I'm not saying everyone will come into that, but at some point in time, there might be some monkey wrench that plays out in a way that you have to really go through that evaluation. And it's hard to restructure your lives because you're got kids and you just live a certain lifestyle, your circles of friends, the things that you do. And it's hard. It can be overwhelming. So sometimes I look back and say, hey, I did it at a younger age. Now I'm just, trying to obviously, build from here.
Yeah. How old were you when you left your corporate job?
I think I was 42,
42.
42, 43.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were those beginning stages? Like, what did that look like?
When I first left?
Yeah. Obviously, you had some money, so you probably had a little bit of a cushion to
Yeah.
step out. And
Yeah, it was exciting. It was just like the new
Yeah.
relationship thing. Like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, this is great. For years
own
of
your own
walking into the
time.
same environment, I always
Right.
wondered, like in corporate, I mean, it's 10, 12-hour days flying everywhere. I mean, I
Mm.
remember thinking to myself sometimes in corporate, I would drive around and be like, who is out in the middle of the day? Like, I don't even understand this because your job is you're just in meetings all day long. You don't really see the outside at all. So I had that freedom
Mm.
and the creativity of like an open book, clean sheet of paper in terms of building this business. While at the same time, that clock is ticking and you start to realize how
Right.
quickly you're burning through money and how long things take.
Right.
And things, as you know, it doesn't go as fast as you'd like. It's generally more expensive than you think things will be. And anything you go to execute, you get a lot less return than you might think. When
So
you're
frustrating.
and so I had a mentor say rules of fives. It takes you 5 times longer than you think. It'll cost you 5 times more, whatever you think looking to do. And it'll get 5 times less the return when you actually execute. And oh my goodness,
Wow.
could that not be the truth?
Is it even worth doing? If you do you catch it early in the process?
I don't, it's so easy to look back. Just so many mistakes. And it's the learning, it's the growth of anything new. It really is. I don't know how to, there's so many things that you you think you would have done differently, but when you're at that moment, you're at that time, you're just trying to. It's a lot of guesswork, a lot of gut, and anything that you
Yeah.
do, as long as you're moving forward and you're opening yourself up to
Right.
where it might take you, then
And learning.
you learn, and you learn through the mistakes.
Right.
So it's just like, how many mistakes can you make before you get to the place that you need to be? And the faster you can make the mistakes, the better.
Right. Well, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your ability to kind of get people bought in, to just make people feel good. You've worked with many teams. Like, what's the secret to working with people?
You know, I don't know. I always treated people honestly the way I wanted to be treated. And I think that my early days in corporate, it was just a very hierarchy in terms of, you just felt intimidated by people. You were so reserved. You didn't want to say anything wrong. There was so much intimidation and fear. And I think that anytime I was in a position to lead, it's like everyone matters, every voice matters. And I think by me taking the lead to throw out dumb ideas and throw out suggestions and be creative with people, you
Mm,
realize that guard goes down. People start to open themselves up, and know what you realize? Everyone contributes. And
mm,
maybe your idea wasn't the landing idea, but you said something that got this person to think differently that led to this. And that creative process, I never cared about my title. I never cared about office, never cared about stuff. It was just bringing people together and saying, let's do something great together. And I did always see the vision of where I wanted to head with the team or company or now the startup, and to rally people to get excited about it, but then to get them to unlock what they have intellectually available to bring to that table, and that their voice mattered as much as mine or anyone else's. That's just becomes motivating. I think a lot of people are intimidated. We
yeah.
all lack confidence. Am I going to say something that's going to make sense? Going to come across stupid? I maybe I don't know.
Right.
And the minute you can kind of just take that away and have people just be in an environment that's learning and sharing and growing together collectively, I think that it's been incredible. The teams that I feel privileged to have led, not teams that I led. I had people that made me look good. Honest to
Mm,
God, people are way smarter, but I think that the culture we had is we're all in this thing together.
yeah. And is that just like fostering trust?
Yeah, I think that you can feel a different leadership style. And I think when you become vulnerable yourself and you're willing to open
Yeah.
yourself up and share the mistakes you made and share the struggles that you've had, and people can make that connection that I'm working for someone that it's not perfect, doesn't believe he's the best that exists, and really wants my input, and I feel valued. That's where compensation, all this other stuff, title doesn't matter when someone just feels like they really are valued and can be heard.
Yeah. I have noticed that too. Compensation, like, you know, I, I've tried it. I feel like it doesn't make too much of a difference. Like, you got people that are just starting out, making, they're low, and they're just hungry and they want to work hard and they got a really good work ethic and they're just kind of into it, and
Yeah.
then other people, you feel like they're not into it. You start throwing money at them, like, hey, I'm hoping to motivate this person. And, maybe they feel undercompensated. Like, what is it? You know? Um, and it doesn't really change. Doesn't change like an attitude, or it doesn't change a buy-in, or it doesn't change
Yeah.
productivity.
Right.
So it's like, how do you motivate those people who maybe just don't have the right attitude, or like they seem, put off? Do you just focus? Do you eliminate those people, or do you spend more time on them? Because at times I feel like, I'm going to give it. I spend too much time focusing on the one person who's not performing, and they're getting 90% of my attention, and then the people who are performing getting 10%.
Sure. It's
Like,
easy. Yeah.
what do you kind of
Well,
do
I think
there?
for the most part, people want to do something and contribute to something bigger than themselves. So when you have that kind of bigger vision, not something broader that
Mm,
can't really be achieved by one person, you have that collective, like, we're going to go do this, whatever the big thing is, it's going to make a difference. I think for most people, there's that rallying cry that just brings people together. And if they're being led through a process like that and they're clear on where we're trying to get to, and the process to get there is very vulnerable and open, and there's no wrong answer in this, right? Everything is, but at the end of the day, for some people, they might be in the wrong role, and they might not be the right person for the job.
Mm.
And a lot of people feel uncomfortable to actually step in and make those tough decisions. But at the end of the day, for anyone that I've ever had to let go, it's exactly what they want. They're not
Right.
in the right place. They haven't found the
Right.
thing that really excites them and gets them passionate to go on and make a difference. And it's almost not fair to them to hold them back from finding it. Listen, it's scary in between and layoff and how do I go find something else? But ultimately, um, it's a win-win when you just have someone that's not where you want them to be, or not where you want them to be, where clearly they don't want to be.
Yeah. So with working, like you were at Schneider Electric. I don't know too much about that company, but like, how do you get people passionate about? I find it hard to get people passionate. Here, and it's like a creative company, and keeping people motivated. Um, how did you do that at that company?
I think a lot of the people that are in that space, just they're career oriented. They want to do well. I mean, there really is a profile that exists. I'm not a miracle worker by any means, but I do know that the teams we created, we just had people that were like never wanted to leave. We were just special as a group, and it
Mm,
was a real nice connection. So I think that, yeah, you're tapping into a demographic of career oriented people that want to move. And then once they lock into a team that's actually fun and doesn't feel corporate. And
yep.
I would have to say that that's probably what the teams that I always led. It felt like a mini startup within this massive X billion dollar Fortune 500 company. We
Mm,
were doing something special. We had an urgency that was just, we were going to change the world, and that was the mentality for the people that kind of came on board and got to be a part of this effort.
yeah. What were some of the projects that you guys were doing?
It was just a lot of uh, IT equipment, battery backup systems for computers, for data centers, the whole power cooling, surge protection, just a complete, infrastructure to help support the critical, data that we all rely on for everything that we do is being driven through technology. And, Schneider just has the infrastructure to help keep everything up and running and doing so in a very efficient manner,
Yeah. I wasn't really sure what they actually did.
Yeah.
I've known a few people that have. Actually, one of my buddies started his career there, and now he's in software sales. But I think that's what he started
Yeah.
doing sales there.
Yeah, everything from a simple surge protector to building wide, UPS systems and energy management tools to help a building run more efficiently and effectively. I mean, it's an incredible company. I mean,
Yeah.
they're now made up of a whole bunch of companies that they've acquired, and APC started as this local Rhode Island startup organization that did incredibly well, and then they got bought by Schneider, and it just went from a $5 or $6 billion company to 20 billion, and the dynamics change.
Yeah. And you said you started like entry level. You started working there for free, which I think is great. I think if people can, it's hard to get an opportunity,
Yeah.
and then if you can handle that opportunity well, it's kind of how you.
Well, listen, let me tell you, at the time, APC, yeah, so I graduated. All they were hiring was like top notch schools and engineering people to go sell the APC products. And I had a marketing degree. So it was
Mm,
not fitting their profile. So I had the opportunity to volunteer for free. And if that was the foot in the door, I then had the chance to interview, of which I interviewed on 3 separate occasions, was told no, I would not fit in the company. It wouldn't work out. I was literally rejected by one of the early founders of the company.
well,
And listen, rejection is it becomes a choice. And I had someone tell me that early on. You
mm,
either walk away and say, get lost, screw it, go find a new job, or go back in front of that person and say, I realized I didn't hit the mark. What was it that you felt uncomfortable?
mm,
And he basically highlighted my lack of engineering around a particular few areas. And I said, I'm going to go study those areas. And every day I would show up at the company and start studying and reading. And I had people internally kind of like rooting me on.
mm.
And I said, I'd like the opportunity to come back to you in a few months and kind of, so this idea of like, let me show you what I'm about. I'm not taking no. I'm not perfect. There's a lot for me to learn. I'm going to go learn it and then come back in. And it was literally a year-long process. It became kind of a funny story internally. They had me always present this story to some of our younger hires because
Yeah.
in any career, there's going to be some rejections. And you have, once again, that choice of screw you, it's you, not me, or you look yourself in the mirror and say, no, I'm not, I can absolutely improve. And I understand how you saw that in me. Can you give me the shot to prove I can make a difference and learn? And I ended up getting back in front of this early founder, and he didn't hire me, but he agreed to let me join their call center to start to do the job for a small amount of money. And if it worked out, then they would move me on to a salaried position. So I think the process was like a year and a half in total. And then finally, I was fully hired. So
Yeah. What was the, well, first, like, I feel like it's such a rare quality to just that persistence, right? And that's kind of a mark of like what you bring to what you're doing now, Yeah,
it's
that
the
has like,
exact thing.
it's
So
like,
it's not accepting no,
Yeah.
and in this, I tell my friend, this either ends up as a really good story where you look back and it's a great story of persistence, or a completely great way to screw up your whole life and everything you've earned over the years and put your family through complete misery. But I hope it's the latter,
Yeah.
or no, the former. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not confused myself. But yeah, that might be the common theme.
Where did you learn that? Was that just kind of
I really don't know. I don't know. I don't. My brother and I, we've said that, like, we never came from much. We definitely wanted a better life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if there was an opportunity to do it, just being told that we couldn't, or any kind of like roadblock, just never seemed to be something that I would get too bothered by,
Right.
frustrated by, but it wouldn't dictate, walking away from something that I thought I could do.
Yeah. And what about like what was it about that company that you were so adamant about them? What was special about them?
Yeah, I mean, APC, it was just it was a fast growing company. Anyone in there, any local universities, I mean, APC was just growing so rapidly. It was just, in Rhode Island,
Mm.
you couldn't help but hear about APC and what an incredible company that it was. So, um, yeah, I think that it was just, and literally from URI, it's a stone's throw. They were 2 miles away. The company was right there. So for a lot of the engineers at URI, this was a place that, many of them were interviewing or trying to get employed. And so I think most people just knew of the opportunity.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. So, where are you kind of at now with your company? I know last time we had spoke, which was a big kind of turning point. You had landed some investors, which was huge. Where are you at now?
Yeah, so it was more of a business partnership, kind of a sales and marketing company that was going to help really promote the product, and we we made great progress, but we didn't get to where we wanted to be. So we are still in a self-funding position. My wife and I, and a couple other heroic people that are believe in us and help give their time and to help us, to move this thing forward. But we're we're at an interesting transition, because I think for the first time we're starting to find that recipe. And it's sad that it took this long, but we are seeing this recipe to say, if we continue down this path and
Right.
continue to onboard the clinics like we are, then it starts to become clear in terms of what we can do as a company, and then our ability to hire people and try to scale this thing is hopefully we're not too far away from that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because kind of doing a huge outreach and marketing campaign, and like it does that made sense too, but kind of like the sensitivity, like the nature of being very sensitive and establishing that trust is probably huge. Which so it makes sense, like kind of going
Sean, you could
through
blow
the
a lot of
doctors.
money, and there's so many attractive places to put your money. I think that's a
Right.
big issue for any startup. Like, if you're not really certain on where to be, there's just so much from Google search and ads. I mean, you could just
Right.
get lost in it. And I'd have to say we did.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money that you burn through that just never performed the way you thought it should. So again, you can't even go back. You have to learn it
Right.
to realize that's not the avenue. So if you can't get the consumer directly, where do they go for help? And do those become potential avenues? So learn, fail, pivot, and just try to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other.
That was something we were lucky for in the beginning, where it's just like we didn't need a whole lot of capital, to start and have any money really. I think I took my initial first sale and I invested it into advertising and
Yeah.
just got like pretty lucky with it. Um, but I was always like very tight with cash, especially in the early days.
Yeah.
you know.
You've been very impressive, how process driven you have been and calculated and numbers oriented. I know when I first met you, I'm like, wow, this is not the average, wedding photo video company. You got a
mm,
good business mind, and you really need that. At the end of the day, you got to have a process. You got to be looking at the numbers, and because a lot of people are good at their profession, their craft,
right.
but the ability to understand impressions and click throughs and leads and how many phone calls come in and what that does from a funnel perspective, that's the engineering of the business, that if you don't know it, you can't get better at it.
Right.
Right? If it's just a fluke, we got a deal, but we don't know everything that we did to get there, you can't scale it. You can't
Yeah.
replicate it.
That was, yeah. And we kind of learned little things over time, but that early days, it was just like very focused on the product itself, having a great product. And then
Hmm.
I think a next, like a pivotal point was the data, kind of understanding where the leads were coming in, why they were coming in, the closing rate. Um, that was, yeah, that was almost like that allowed me to make better decisions, which was like super helpful. I wasn't just like tossing money around. I was like, and then
Right.
where should we put our attention, our time, and our money? So that was big. But yeah, I didn't have, or at least I didn't think I had a lot of like, entrepreneurial skills. It was more like I was creative, and then certainly had zero admin skills.
Look at you now.
um, and but that's always something I like. Your ability to kind of work with people is like, I never seen that before, and it's like, I kind of struggle in that department as far as like, you know, I've been able to build a team, but my people skills, and two, also being high stress, like a lot of the times
Yeah,
overworked and things like
sure.
that
Yeah.
doesn't help with working with people.
No, it doesn't. It
Yeah,
doesn't. But everyone has their own style too, though. Not,
yeah,
your ability to, it's just ultimately, it's just complete respect.
mm,
It's just giving, and everyone has their own way, their own chemistry, their own, but to make that personal connection, and again, where someone feels heard and they feel like they're trusted. Um, there's a lot of different approaches to get there, but at the core of it, that's probably what it is. And then feeling really excited about where they might go with you,
right.
and that they can contribute and making a difference. And I don't care how small the task is, do they see how that connects to something bigger or greater?
Yeah. And how do you really paint that picture, How do you paint that vision where cuz I feel like that is sometimes the disconnect. They don't feel, they see it as a job, the task, and the day to day, but how do you connect it to like the growth of the company, the executing on the vision of the company, um, to them being a part of that?
Yeah, I think that part of that is, do they have a part in it? And it
Mm,
doesn't matter how big or small that might be, but I think everyone tied into something bigger, something greater, for whether it's a reward or a success or a celebration that the team's going through. I do think you got to be connected to something bigger, and it doesn't always have to be money or bonuses or team events. It's all could be the impact of, look at the difference that we made. Look at how someone's special day and how much we contributed to that. And if they see that that's something that's celebrated and rewarded.
mm,
And I also think that for a lot of times we did a lot of that. I would go out of your way to just make a difference for someone. I mean, honestly, times you just hand someone a card, a gift card. And I'm not saying it's always money, but it's that gesture of, you just gone, you put X hours in, you've gone above me. I like the fact that you had a choice to be negative in that situation, or when everyone was getting negative in that meeting, you just,
yeah.
you chose a different path and you helped me move the team in the right place. And again, not everything has to be handing someone something. It
Right.
just could be acknowledging those little moments
Right.
that made a difference that you
So
recognized.
true. I remember I gave like these Christmas bonuses out, and no one even responded. And I didn't know if they got them.
Oh, that's the worst.
I was like, I had to check in with some. I was like, hey, like, did that go through?
Yeah, yeah.
um, because I thought they'd be like, oh wow, like, yeah, thank you so much. Um, but then I
It's
gave
almost,
someone like I sent them $5 to Starbucks. I said, "Hey, like you've been working really hard, like coffee on me, And they
yeah.
were like, "This appreciation text."
Oh
It's
my
like,
gosh, isn't
"Thank
that
you so much
crazy?
for this. I appreciate you. Thank
Yeah.
you." Like I
Some
was
things
like,
people feel entitled, like Christmas bonus, entitled, a
mm,
spot, a little difference of, I love that.
"Yeah,
Sending you a coffee, go take another hour, get out of here early today. And those are things I would just do all the time. Like, I just want to see you out of here. I don't care. Just go home. You're going too hard.
Yeah.
that doesn't help me just go to see your family.
Yeah.
Go take them all to dinner. I mean, I didn't care if sometimes I was doing it personally or it's the little gestures.
Yeah. I've been trying to double down on that, like, employee culture and things like that, where
Mm,
it's like, should we do, like, more outings, more team dinners, like,
yeah.
you know, um, I don't know, maybe it's just like
It's sometimes not the
trying.
big things.
Yeah, and that's
I
what it
don't
seems
think
like.
those
It's always
I
like,
don't think
yeah,
those hurt.
right,
It's nice to have, but it might be more of those little moments.
go home.
2
Yeah,
minutes, 5 minutes. Hey, I love the way you've handled that. Or you were doing that. You could have settled. That was probably fine, but you pushed that edit to go 10x back. That's the difference.
yeah,
Can't thank you enough.
yeah.
You know?
And how is it like? So obviously rewarding, like reinforcing like positive things that you want to see, but like, how do you deal with like correction? If someone's not performing or balls are getting dropped, like how do you call that out without also like demoralizing, the team or team member?
Yeah. I think the worst thing is not acknowledging it or addressing it. And I don't know if
Mm,
this is going to sound too corporate, but I always had that idea of like, let me tell you a few things I really like about what you do.
mm.
Because there's great things that people are do. And here's a couple things I want you to think about, you know?
Oh, I like that. Think about.
Yeah, I always, so now you're not putting someone on the defense.
Right.
And for you to be doing it this way, there might be defects in my process. There might be defects in how we're handling as a team. And you can almost spin a negative where it could become their strength. It
Yeah.
could something like, would you mind leading this a project to figure out how we don't do this again? You can just so you always want to highlight the things like, I notice you're doing really a couple things really well and
Mm,
be specific. But there's one thing in particular I do. I want you to think about it. I want you to help me to know if you're experiencing it, others might be, or is there something I'm doing that's leading to that outcome? Because I certainly don't mean it, but I also know that times I'm stressed, I'm a little frustrated. I think the more vulnerable you are in those conversations,
yeah.
then you can get to the core. But again, not to say that some people are just not the right people and it's not a good fit, but from the most part, if you've done your diligence on the front end, then you got people that should care, that want to make a difference, that they're probably feeling something that needs to be acknowledged at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Cause sometimes like, avoiding this conversation is kind of
Ye-
like, a go-to. So that's good advice to actually have these conversations.
I just can't keep much in. I found myself like it became my way. Otherwise, I feel like I could quickly get frustrated and start to show that frustration because I
Right.
had kind of low tolerance for, again, I don't need, I just, at the end of the day, you can sense when someone's out of sync and
Right.
it can quickly bring down others fast. And I for myself needed to be in the right positive environment and surround
Right.
myself by that good
And
energy.
that's so challenging because even to like getting yourself, like I need to get myself in it sometimes, and it's like, here I am, I'm struggling too. And you kind of come in, or even worse, you could be really charged up and be in a positive mood, like, hey, we're going to tackle the world today.
Yeah.
And then you might have, the one person in the meeting that's just,
Right.
hey, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Like, and it all kind of, so that focus can be pulled.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Right. There's times we just don't come with that energy. And that's where I think if you do the hard work and you take those little moments and don't let them, they can weigh you down. Not low energy is potentially a lot of those little negative moments that start to weigh on you, or all the problems that are there that you haven't really gone after. And I think that, you can't react on every single thing, but if someone if you feel it's burdening your spirit outside of general work, and
Right.
there's a chemistry there that you're feeling off, or you don't feel like you can, as connected as you want to be, then you're better off just going right at it.
Hmm. Yeah. Never easy.
It's never easy.
Leadership is like never easy.
There's no handbook. You're dealing with, people at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
they have complicated lives and things that we don't even know that they're managing and going through. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So last question. You said there's no manual, but is there anything, that maybe a book you read or advice you've been giving kind of over the years that was just like like a game changer for you? Um,
Looking for a smoking gun. It's so funny. If my wife was here, she'd say, this guy is unbelievable at buying books. I don't think he's gotten past the first chapter. I'm embarrassed by it. I
I'm
don't
the
do
same-
enough
I'm the
reading. And
same way.
I
I'll
buy
buy-
you need to buy the book on Netflix business. And chapters in,
Yeah.
I just can't find
terrible
myself. I don't
reading
know. They all
habits. There's
sound
that
the same.
Woody Allen joke that like is he got kidnapped, and his dad has like terrible reading habits. So he like read like the first part of the ransom note and then like put it down. And so he didn't,
That's great. Yeah. I think it's the practical experience versus textbook. In every uncomfortable moment you could throw yourself in, do it.
Hmm.
And the areas we all kind of avoid, the things that we don't love to do or the conversations we don't love to have.
Right.
And those are the moments, those are the lessons that really will provide you that wisdom and knowledge and know-how that you're not going to find by, reading one statement in a book that stood out that you can write on a whiteboard and changes everything. So
right.
It's one not hard conversation. It's one conversation, one interaction at a time that becomes the learning.
Right. All right. I guess we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. And I know we've been trying to make it happen for a while now, but we did it.
What is a crowd of people lined up? This is high demand. My pleasure.
Great. So thanks for tuning in for another episode of Moving the Mountain, a creative leadership podcast. This has been an episode with Marc Sherman of Organic Conceptions, the journey to parenthood. Marc, what would you want to say to anybody listening, where they can find your product, how they can learn more?
Yeah, it's at organic-conceptions.com. Check us out, request a free call. We'll talk to anyone. It's a business, but it's a mission. It's something we care about. And as long as I can help it, every person individually matters. So we have lots of one-on-one conversations to explain who we are and what we do. If it's a fit, great. If it's not, we're not looking to take someone's money. If it doesn't really make a difference, there's too much that they're dealing with already, then. So, they can reach out at any time. Lots of ways to contact us off the website.
Awesome. Love that. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.